Hello and welcome to Teachings in Education with Frank Avella, ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, a therapy based on principles to produce positive changes in behavior. This lesson will cover many of the important topics of applied behavior analysis. The topics covered will include an introduction to ABA, various concepts, an overview of ABA through 4 different sections. It will also break down 6 different components and eventually finish with functional analysis. So let's dive into the introduction. ABA looks to study the how and why of behavior, and this is done through an investigation. ABA strategies should be individualized for each child. We know children are unique in their own ways and have their own idiosyncrasies. Professionals become board-certified behavior analysts and may work as independent practitioners and offer behavioral services. There is a large emphasis on evidence-based strategies. The decisions that are made are always based on data. And the great thing is that behaviorists look to provide training to family members and caregivers. As they spend most of the time with the children, caregivers desire to learn and help. Moving across now to cover some of the concepts. One main concept is operant conditioning. This type of conditioning requires having a reinforcement or reward after the behavior has occurred. Classical conditioning is similar, but in this case, classical conditioning focuses on involuntary reactions. Think the Pavlov dog experiment. Environmental stimuli are studied. The behavior of children and students are altered by the changes in perception of their environment. Reinforcement is anything that increases the frequency of a behavior. There is positive and negative reinforcement. Punishment, on the other hand, is something that decreases the likelihood of a behavior. Explain to students that it is the behavior that is being punished, not the child. On to the characteristics of ABA. Credit to Bear, Wolf, and Risley. First off, it is applied, meaning it's based on significant social behaviors for all. Behaviorally, obviously, but the behavior must be observable and measurable in form. Analytic, research, experimentation, and making sense of all the research. Generality, the work should apply to different groups and different environments. Technological, described in a way that most researchers can understand how it is written. Next, conceptually systematic, so that the field is based on common behavior principles. And lastly, effective. The children are seeing actual results from the ABA. The next section is the ABCs of ABA. ABCs help to understand the role of consequences in behavior. The A stands for antecedent. The B stands for behavior. The C stands for consequence. The antecedent is what happens before the behavior. For example, first the teacher lectures, then assigns 5 pages of work. The behavior is the action as a result of the antecedent. So maybe the student yells at the teacher or a student. And the consequence is what comes after the behavior. So the teacher sends the student to the guidance counselor's office as a result of the yelling. The next section is measurement of behavior. Behavior analysts use different methods to collect data. They may collect data by frequency. For example, Joe hit someone 5 times, whether it be a punch or a kick. Next is the rate. For example, 12 hits in 6 hours. You still count the hits, but you add in a time component. Duration. Here we may have a student that is crying for 10 minutes, so measure the time from the beginning of the meltdown to the finish. Response latency. You will calculate the amount of time it takes a student to correctly respond after being told. You tell the student to sit down and it takes them 15 seconds to do so after being told. Up next is teaching strategies. First up is discrete trial. Instructions are given to students in a very concise manner, and the student's good behavior is rewarded. The rewards and incentives will vary amongst students. The next strategy is naturalistic, which is used more for guidance of socialization skills, usually for autistic children, and is based in the child's own environment Token economy is used to modify behavior by rewarding students for making the right choices. They receive tokens that can be cashed in for rewards. Contingent observation is very similar to giving a student a timeout. A child may be removed from a fun activity because they are being disruptive. Now we're going to take a look at some of the common components of ABA. First up is task analysis. That is the breaking down of a skill into manageable tasks. First, you want to identify the target skill. It could be as simple as tying your shoes. Number 2, determine the prerequisites for the skill, like first being able to put on your shoes. Next, you break down the skill. For example, loop, swoop, and then pull for the laces. 4, test the components. Test each component for yourself. Consider the student's perspective. You have to teach the skill to the student. Often, ABA therapists use videos to show their students the exact way of doing the skill. And last, assess the student in various situations. Moving on to shaping. Shaping is gradually modifying an existing behavior to a desired one. For example, let's say a student is afraid of public speaking, specifically giving a speech in front of the class. Begin shaping by first having the student speak just from his desk. Start while seated and then move to standing and speaking. Once comfortable with that, let them come to the front and simply read note cards or use posters as a support. Ultimately, you want the student to reach the goal of speaking publicly in front of the entire classroom without any support. On to generalization. Here, students apply what they learned in the classroom to real-life situations. One method of teaching is using different examples. If you're teaching what the ball is, you want to show them as many different examples of a ball to get a full understanding of its meaning. Generalize by using different people. If you're teaching how to do a handshake, let the student shake hands with a variety of different people. One of the most important ways to generalize is by using different settings. Take playing, for example. Just having this child play in the classroom isn't always enough. Take them to the park, the playground, out for recess, wherever. Next is prompting. Prompting can be used to redirect student attention and behavior. One way to prompt students is by using a gesture. A verbal prompt is as simple as telling a student to please be quiet or raise their hand. Positional prompts are a little tricky. Place 2 choices near a child, with the desirable choice closer to the student, and the wrong choice further away from the student. Visual prompting is yet another method. A teacher can leave a small post-it on a desk. Lastly discussed is the physical prompt, which should be used gently and when you have a strong relationship. One way is hand-over-hand writing to get the student started. We have now made it on to fading. Fading is slowly and systematically decreasing the amount of assistance needed for a student to complete a task or activity. Fading is often paired with prompting, where teachers are able to get to the point where they don't need prompts anymore, which is the goal. Prompts become less and less intrusive until mastery, so a parent may have to physically prompt their child to read. At first, you may replace more intrusive prompts with less intrusive prompts. But the goal in mind is to have a self-sufficient student that doesn't need any prompting. The last component is extinction. With extinction, the reinforcement for a problem behavior is ignored. Here is an example of a reinforcing behavior. Let's say you have a child that wants a soda instead of apple juice. So that child throws the juice on the floor. The mom stresses out and tells the child, "Drink whatever you want," thus reinforcing the behavior. Instead, the parent should just walk away and not give the child the soda that he wants, thereby decreasing the likelihood that it will happen again. There are many more ways to use extinction other than this example, but this is just one. And finally, the last section, functional analysis. Functional behavior analysis is a scientific process. Teachers use functional behavioral assessments, FBAs, to determine why a student behaves a certain way. FBAs identify the why, how, where, and when of a behavior. All these questions are answered through research. again with particular focus on the why of behavior. ABC charts are used to collect data through observation of the antecedent of the behavior and the consequences that follow the behavior. Behavior intervention plans are formed. These plans should be specific to each child and reviewed time and time again. Right now I want to say thank you for your time. Please subscribe, like, and share this video as well. Check the description for some great links to resources for ABA, as well as ways to support this channel.